All right, everybody, you have just tuned in to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. I think I said that word right. It's always debatable. Man, what a start to the new league year. It has been absolutely bonkers around the NFL. My gosh, I mean, they got TV deals announced today. But all kinds of player movement and everything else going on across the league. And obviously, if you've tuned into this program, then you are here to get our thoughts, opinions, and knowledge on what the Steelers have done. And obviously, to this point, we've seen far more go than stay, but that's kind of what happens when you're in the situation that the Steelers are. So I'm not going to banter on much longer. There's too much stuff to get into. So Ben and Ian are joining me this evening, and gentlemen, I am drinking a bottle of it's a brown sugar bourbon from the state of Washington. It's very, very different, very different. I kind of enjoy it. And Ben, you are enjoying the Redbreast. Is that what it is?
Yep, 12-year-old Irish whiskey.
Little Irish whiskey, and Ian, you are having a brewski tonight, right?
I am. I'm having a Conway's Irish Ale from Great Lakes Brewing, and it is delicious.
Oh, on that note, I will open a Guinness.
Oh, well,
I had one of those last night, and it was also delicious.
I obviously, guys, I wanted to start out with players that have signed elsewhere and players that have stayed, but there was so much talk about JuJu today that I want to start there. And I think we've done a really, really good job so far, kind of calling out a lot of stuff in terms of salary cap, which guys would go, how much they'd go for. And I will admit, I am very surprised by what has occurred with JuJu. If you would have told me a month ago that we'd be this far into free agency, and we're not that far, but this far, and he wouldn't be signed, I would have said BS. So Ben, what is happening with JuJu? Why is he not signed? What's going on here?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating because it doesn't make any sense to me. I do not think of JuJu as a number one receiver, just so we're clear. I know I love the guy.
Yep.
I love his effort. I love a lot of the things he does. Some of the things he does I find a little childish and unnecessary. We've talked about that before. I'm not going to rehash it. But, there have been a lot of guys that had serious character concerns in the NFL that were highly sought after in previous years. And TikTok is not something that teams should be worried about. So my instinct is that JuJu's agent has held out for too much money and overvalued his market, and that he's coming into a soft market. Chris Nicolau made a point today on Twitter. Hey, Chris, that he thinks that basically these guys, there's a soft wide receiver market.
Yep.
Because guys are competing with a very good wide receiver class that's coming in. And all those wide receivers that can be drafted are going to be dirt cheap. And then you're going to a team and you're saying, yeah, I want $17 million. Well, yeah, why should I do that when I can get a guy and develop him and pay 1/17 of that?
Something the Steelers do quite well.
It's something the Steelers do extremely well. But a lot of teams don't, so they pay the big bucks. But, JuJu today, the Jets signed another wide receiver, I believe.
Keelan Cole. Yeah, Jacksonville.
Keenan Cole. And then the Dolphins signed Ian, who was it?
Will Fuller.
Will Fuller.
Small hands. Fast but small hands.
But small hands, exactly. One route guy, kind of a one-trick pony.
Yep.
Those two spots were the kind of the last spots he could go in the first tier of wide receivers. So now he's kind of, the music's stopping and he doesn't have a chair.
Didn't Kenny Golladay? Did he agree to go to the Giants?
He's not signed yet. I don't.
He's not
He's
signed.
not. Okay, I thought I saw something that he was going to go to New York, but I wasn't.
He's visiting the Giants, but he's not signed there yet.
Right.
Which actually I think is one of the reasons why JuJu hasn't signed yet, because Golladay can do most of the things JuJu can do and do them better. He's a better deep threat. He's more of a number one receiver, and arguably when the top receiver on the market hasn't been signed yet, it's kind of harder for the guy who's number 2, number 3, number 4, wherever you want to put JuJu in this wide receiver market to get signed until that top guy goes. So that is one thing that the guys who have been signed so far have been signed to pretty small deals, relatively speaking, for wide receiver contracts. Although, Keenan Cole's not that great, and he got $5.5 million a year. So, it's interesting that. And one of the things to keep in mind too is that because of the cap going down, there's less teams that have a lot of money right now to throw around. So if you think about your supply and demand curves of economics, that the demand might be there, but the supply of cash isn't there. So,
That's a good point.
You either have to take a deal that's structured in such a way that there's more money in outlying years, which probably isn't guaranteed money, or you get a deal like Mike Hilton got from Cincinnati, which was a terrible contract, actually, that looks like a 4-year deal on paper, but is actually probably just a 1-year deal that they can get out of after 1 year for minimal cap, considerations. So, at that point, where JuJu is now, he kind of has to ask himself, like, is it worth taking a 1-year deal? And the NFL just signed a, $110 billion TV contract. Is it worth kind of, playing this year for whatever and then going out next year again on the free agent market when there's going to be a lot more money available out there for a lot more teams to spend? Because really, where we entered this season with the cap going down, about half the league was either right at the cap or over the cap and basically didn't have any money to spend.
Well, real quick, I've got to say something here. Yes, the cap is going to go up next year. It's not going to go up as dramatically as people are expecting after they read that the TV deal is going to generate $10 billion a year for the league. Yes, it will. It's great. It's fantastic. But the league lost $120 million per team last year in revenue. And the cap is figured based upon revenue. And they're going to spread that hit out over the course of 4 years. So whatever the cap would have been next year with that $10 billion, you can shave off about $30 million. So it's going to go up, I think. Yeah. But it's not going to go up as dramatically as people think. I don't believe. I mean, it may go up 12 or 15 or 18 million. I mean, that'd be great. If it went up to 200 million next year, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's about what I'm thinking, 200.
But I don't think it's going to go higher than that.
Last year, but yeah.
Well, so let me throw this in here too, and Ben, you were kind of talking the financials. I see a lot of people suggesting, well, maybe JuJu will come back to the Steelers now on a 1-year deal. Explain why that's hard to do, though, a 1-year deal when you're already cash strapped, right?
Yeah, because you can't spread. Basically, the thing a multi-year deal allows teams to do is make the first year of that contract cap hit on the first year of the contract very small. So it's very easy to take that hit then. The Steelers would have to do, if they were to do a short-term deal with him, it'd have to be at least 2 years. Right. And, doing a 1-year deal with him would have to be at or close to the minimum in order to fit under the cap, because whatever that 1-year deal is, the whole thing would count against the cap this year, where a multi-year deal allows them to have a small sliver of that cap, of that total cap hit, the total contract cost, count as a cap hit this year, and then defer it into later seasons, which they get criticized for a lot. But it's all accounting, guys, and that's something that all teams do, and they will continue to do. This is just the way of the things in the NFL now. It's on teams to manage their cap. It's on players to try and make as much money as they possibly can. And, both sides do their jobs and do it well.
So Ian, put yourself in Kevin Colbert's position. A month ago, you probably were thinking, okay, JuJu, thanks for your time here. It's been great. So long. Now, all of a sudden, the door becomes a little cracked open, and maybe there's a possibility he comes back. I mean, what do you do? Because you've probably already started budgeting in different areas. So do you seriously consider bringing him back, or do you just let the ship sail?
Ian,
Yes.
how old is JuJu in 2 years?
In 2 years?
In 2 years, he's 26.
26, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, he's incredibly young. He's 24, which, I mean, JuJu last year was younger than some of the receivers that were coming out in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah. So I here's what I'll say. If you can get the financials to work, they should definitely bring JuJu back. But it is dependent on the financials. JuJu was our most reliable receiver last year. Yes, I know we had him running a lot of short routes, a lot of crossing routes. He didn't break a lot of big plays. He didn't have a 100-yard game until the playoffs. But I mean, look at the offense we were running. We were running like Alex Smith check down offense, where we were throwing 2-yard passes on 3rd and 9. Like, it was frustrating and ridiculous. And the deep shots were going to Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. They weren't going to JuJu like they had in years past. That being said, JuJu was, as I said, our most reliable receiver on a team that had some drop issues, but also he was a guy who kind of developed into that Hines Ward mentality of always knowing where the first down sticks were and doing everything he could to get to that line. I mean, JuJu, we talked about it last year, did so many little things during games. I mean, jumping on that fumble in a pile of 6 Giants in the opener,
huge play.
throwing some blocks for running backs and receivers down the field, just grinding out first downs on 3rd downs to keep drives alive. That those kind of plays don't necessarily show up in the score sheet. It's going to show up as a recovered fumble, but or it's going to a downfield block isn't really going to show up. But I mean, the kid was in a contract year. I mean, he could have just laid it up on those plays and taken it easy and tried to preserve his body and be healthy through the year. But I mean, he went out there and gave it everything he had to try and help this team be successful. And I really respect him for that. His effort on the field was not to be questioned, and his hands were reliable. And the other thing I'll say that always sticks with me about JuJu is he made 2 of the biggest, I'll say, what if plays in Steelers history. In recent, maybe not Steelers history, recent Steelers history.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? Okay. The first one was in Oakland when we lost to a terrible Raiders team. We got the ball back with like 20 seconds left, and Ben hit JuJu down the sidelines, and he got it all the way down to field goal range for us to try a field goal. And Boswell was terrible that year, and he slipped and fell on the terrible turf in Oakland and missed the field goal. But like, if he makes that and we go to overtime and we win that game, we're talking about JuJu as a hero that saved that game. The Jesse James play doesn't happen if JuJu doesn't take a pass 75 yards 2 plays before that to even get us in that position against New England. So, JuJu has always given it his all, and he's always been a guy that's been able to step up and make plays for us. Unfortunately, those 2 games, we didn't finish either of those games, but I often wonder if we'd remember JuJu differently if Boswell had made that field goal and if the Jesse James catch had actually been called a catch.
Well, it's funny because I remember, a lot of his detractors, making comments about, well, if he could have just gotten the ball in the end zone, it would have never been an issue in those games. I mean, it just, that kind of stuff just irritates me. And I saw so much just ugliness towards him today. And, I understand people struggle with age and times changing and stuff, but people treat this kid like he's been convicted of crimes, like he's being accused of awful things. He does TikToks, for God's sakes. I mean, I just don't understand the hatred, but I don't want to get too far off into that. Go ahead.
I do want to make one quick point about this.
Yeah.
And it's a social point, so I'll make it brief. But basically, if you the point that Mark just made, that people are talking about him as though he's been convicted of a crime, and I've seen people on Twitter refer to him as a thug.
Oh yeah, yep.
That's just code for another fucking racial trope.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely it is.
And when you see people accuse other people of being racist because of the way they treat him, that's why. It's because people are making a big deal out of stupid shit he's doing because he's a kid.
Yeah.
And I get it. Sometimes that, racism, sometimes racist claims are nonsensical. They're just the convenient thing to reach for. But in this instance, there may be some truth to it because what he's done is basically pretty harmless. I mean, like I said before on the show, I think dancing on logos is childish and unnecessary.
Agree.
And I'm glad he stopped. But I think that people need to take a step back and try and look at this from an overview and say, okay, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of heat being hurled at this guy. Is it all about winning and losing? I mean, the guy fumbled twice. My God, how much heat is he taking for that?
That's
how many times have other guys fumbled?
How many times
how many drops did Deontay Johnson have this season? Is he getting any heat for that? No. And there's a shock jock in the Pittsburgh area who seems to target certain players for abuse, bad mouthing, whatever you want to put it. And he's accused of it frequently too. And you have to wonder how much of that is true. And I'm going to stop there because I don't want to get too far into this. But basically what I want you to do is just think. That's it.
Yep, I agree. Well said. You're listening to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by DEK Roofing, serving Broward and the southern Palm Beach counties of Florida. Whether it's commercial, residential, multifamily, or condos, contact DEK Roofing today by visiting dekroofing.com. All right, so let's discuss those who are no longer Steelers. First of all, congratulations to Bud Dupree. He is off to Tennessee. He's getting a very nice chunk of money. And, guys, I'm sure there was a moment when he laid on the Heinz Field grass. He knew the knee was badly hurt. He pounded his fist into the ground. And he had to be thinking, why now? Why now when I'm looking at a big payday? And I'm glad he's still getting it. He worked hard. He made himself a better football player. I'm sad he's not in Pittsburgh, but the fact of the matter is it's economics, and he's off to Tennessee. And good luck there, except when you play the Steelers. That's the best I can say to that. Ian, how surprised were you about Tyson Alu going, well, number one, leaving, but going back to Jacksonville?
I was a little bit surprised until I read that his family still lived there because that's where he was drafted and played most of his career until he came to Pittsburgh. So when I saw that his family still lived there, I wasn't as surprised. My surprise wore off a little bit. I was like, oh, that makes sense. He wanted to go back and be close to home at the end of his career. So, he's got a wife and kids, a couple kids, I think. So, I was surprised at first. I thought he actually might retire, but good for him, being able to make a little bit more money at the end of his career. And I won't hold it against him to want to go back and be closer to his family.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree.
He's 34, and it stings a little bit because we don't have anyone else. And I think he could have played one more year at least a decent level in Pittsburgh. But, let's be frank, this is kind of the point where injuries start catching up with guys, and it takes longer to recover from workouts and everything else. And as a result, production slips. So I'm not necessarily saying that's what's going to happen to him. I'm just saying that's more likely when you reach that age. And, I don't think they made a huge effort to keep him, which bothers me a little bit, but
well, do you think, Ben, that maybe they saw something that many of us didn't, that just, like you said, he's 34 years old. Maybe we don't want to re-sign him. I mean, was that a possibility? Because you're right. I don't think there was much effort to keep him around.
I think they looked at what they had in terms of available cap space and decided that it was better spent elsewhere. They were in touch with Mike Hilton's people at that same time and trying to talk him into coming back. Let's talk about that deal next. But,
yes,
they were trying to preserve cap space to sign the guys they really wanted to keep first. And Tyson wasn't a priority. And so he got away.
Yeah, and you mentioned Hilton, and Ian, you kind of already laid out a little bit about his contract as he goes over to the Bengals.
It sucks. It's a shitty deal.
Yeah, I mean, we knew, first of all, just to preface it, we kind of knew that the Steelers were looking at one or the other. Was it going to be Cam Sutton or Mike Hilton? In the NFL today, you got to have guys that are versatile and can cover, and that meant they were probably going to go with Sutton, and they did.
They wanted both.
It sure looked that way. And Ian, what on earth was Mike Hilton doing going to the Bengals? Because this contract is, it's kind of weird.
Sucks.
It is. It does suck. Yes, it's not good. But I understand from the Bengals standpoint. The Bengals like physical, aggressive corners, and Mike Hilton is certainly that. They also like corners that can play, press man, and Hilton is at his best in short, small areas. Hilton is at his worst when he has to cover guys running down the field. So, we'll see how well. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Would Hilton work out on, a different team, just because his style was very well suited to the style that the Steelers carved out for him in a role, from that blitzing corner and run support type. So I think he'll fit well in Cincinnati, actually, with, sort of their philosophy that they like to have of physical corners. We've seen guys like William Jackson have success there. And, even before him, your Jonathan Josephs, your other physical corners play very well there. Your Pac-Man Joneses, that was a physical corner, but didn't have anything between his ears either. So Hilton definitely has something between his ears.
Yes, he does.
And, wish him the best of luck. But yeah, the deal itself is terrible. I mean, on the surface, when you say, 4 years at $24 million, you're like, oh, $6 million a year, that's a good contract. But there's hardly any guaranteed money. The thing you have to remember about Cincinnati too is they're cheapskates. They don't like to actually spend any money. So they
That's also true.
The minimum amount possible up front, and basically put themselves in a situation where they won't have to pay guys, and they notoriously cut guys very early into contracts.
Right. There are stories about players going to Cincinnati, going into the locker room and wanting to get a Gatorade after practice, and somebody pointing the Gatorade machine over there in the corner, and it's $1.
It's true story.
It's $1 for a Gatorade. You got to buy it your own. The team does not supply it.
Yeah. No, I know. And
that's how cheap Mike Brown is.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And so Hilton goes there. Another one is Matt Filer. Matt Filer goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. Looks like a 3-year deal, $21 million. I saw a couple of the parameters, but I'm surprised, guys. That's all I can say. Ben, I did not see him getting that kind of money.
Hey,
I thought
thank your lucky stars.
Yeah. I thought he had a real down year moving into guard, and I'm stunned. But yeah. So
he did, and apparently they're going to play him at right tackle. That's their plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's it's a little bit different from that standpoint. He did get $13 million fully guaranteed, also, which is basically 2 years worth of money fully guaranteed. So he's going to be around for 2 years, almost certainly. Unlike Mike, Hilton got $8.5 million. He's going to get $8.5 million this year, but the Bengals can cut him next year, and save $2 million on the cap if they do it pre-June 1, and then they're done. They don't have any more dead money after that. So it's like that is That wasn't a great deal, which makes me wonder how hard the Steelers tried to keep him. I mean, they must just be really cash strapped. I don't know what else could explain that. But as far as Filer goes, let's just be thankful that he got the deal he got. I think it's going to net us a 6th round comp pick. Other people listed at 5.
Mm-hmm.
But Rashad Perryman was the top 6th round comp pick awarded this year to Tampa Bay, and he got a $6.5 million contract last year. And I think despite the fact that, the cap has gone down, those markers are going to keep going up, not as fast as they did before, but they're going to keep going up. So my feeling, and it's just an instinct because things could change, it kind of depends on what happens in free agency, but my feeling is that Filer is going to be the top of that 6th round tier. He's going to be the guy unless the Steelers sign a player that cancels out that contract being lost. We'll probably get a 6th round pick, in my opinion.
And that's great. And just real quick on that front too, that you mentioned the comp pick. What does the fact that JuJu isn't getting any attention signing anywhere? I mean, we were all pretty confident that we're looking at a 3rd round comp there. What happens to that now?
Well, it depends on where he signs. I mean,
right.
We can sit around and we can speculate all day long, but it doesn't make any difference until he actually signs a contract. And if he signs a short-term deal, that comp pick's going to suck.
Yeah.
Almost certainly getting a 3 for Bud Dupree.
Right.
But JuJu, who knows, man? I don't know.
Yeah. Let's Ian, let's swing it over and talk about Zach Banner. I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that he's a really well-liked young man. He is very outspoken about racism and ugliness in the community. He is just a fun-loving young man.
Fan interaction is outstanding.
I'm sorry?
His fan interaction.
It is. It's great. It's great. He's very sarcastic when he needs to be, and he gets the deal. 2 years, $9 million, I think, and but that aside, all three of us have major concerns about what this means for the tackle position for the Steelers in 2021. Does this mean he just replaces Chooks and goes back to right tackle? Chooks kicks over to left. We have concerns there. If you move Banner over to left and keep Chooks at right tackle, we still have concerns there. So, Ian, what do you see happening here? And I realize it's just March 18th, but what do you see kind of right now through the trees here?
Yeah. I will also add that Zach Banner has put in a ton of work and a ton of effort on improving just his physical body. I mean, he came out of college and was dramatically overweight and has really gotten himself in great NFL shape and been able to carve out a decent length career for himself. I mean, when you consider the average NFL career is only a handful of years, I mean, he's been around the league for a few years now, and with this will be his 3rd year with the Steelers this coming year. So good for him being able to do that. That said, I said a few weeks ago on the show that my worst case scenario for the offensive line was that we'd re-sign Banner and be like, oh well, Hassenauer can play center and we'll plug Banner in at one tackle, Chooks at the other one, and Dotson and DeCastro, and we're good to go. Like, this team needs at least 2 draft picks on the offensive line, one at center and one at tackle, at some point, kind of however that falls, whether that's 2nd round, 3rd round, 1st round, whatever it is. We need 2 young linemen in this draft, preferably in the first half of it. And that said, the Steelers have done this kind of stuff before where they've signed a guy in free agency at a position and then used a 1st round pick on that position. I mean, we signed Morgan Burnett at safety and then drafted Terrell Edmonds, who is basically a similar type player to what Morgan Burnett was. We signed, we drafted Devin Bush in, the same year that we signed Mark Barron at inside linebacker. So I think, it's just because we sign a guy in free agency does not mean that's the be all end all of that position.
It's very true.
The other thing I'll say is that, all these guys we're signing to 2-year deals, they are essentially a 1-year deal with a team option for the second year is what it is.
Yeah.
If you look at Banner's deal, he got a small signing bonus and is on what is essentially a minimum salary for the first year. And then the second year, his salary number kicks up quite a bit to what, $5.5 million the second year.
Yes.
From the Steelers' standpoint, if Banner works out and he can become a starting tackle, then you're getting a starting tackle in year 2 for like $5.5 million, which is a huge steal in today's NFL when, the top guys are getting, well into 8 figures actually, over 10, 12, 14, 15 million, some of the guys. So, it's a huge steal to get a guy at that price if he works out. And if he doesn't work out, then you save $5 million against the cap by cutting him. But if he doesn't work out,
though?
Oh, where does he play? I mean, I think you got to put him at right tackle. I agree,
and I'm scared if they put him at left tackle. Look, I love Zach, and I really hope that he proves me wrong, and
absolutely
that he comes out and looks tremendous. But putting Zach at left tackle would not be an improvement over the poor play we saw from Al Villanueva last year. It just would not. And there are certain athletic limitations that I don't think can be overcome. And it would scare me from the standpoint. I mean, it would be another Jonathan Scott deal where your quarterback was getting hit over and over and over and over. And they sign a street free agent off the street and make him the starter the next week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think Zach is fine on the right. I'm not crazy about him.
Good run blocker. I like him doing that.
Yeah.
I don't think he's very good in pass pro, and he's not the athlete you want at left tackle.
No. The other thing is, though, Okorafor is going into the last year of his rookie deal. So if you draft someone this year, there's nothing that says Okorafor is even going to be on the team next year. So, in theory, let's say we draft a tackle in the first round, right? Maybe your week 1, starting line has Okorafor at left tackle and Banner at right tackle, and then whoever your draft pick is, by a few weeks into the season may surpass Okorafor at the left tackle spot. And then all of a sudden you've got, your left tackle is a rookie. There's going to be some growing pains, but also he's now under contract for 4 years plus a 5th-year option, and Okorafor is in the last year of his deal and just kind of fades out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point too. You got to look at the numbers, you got to look at the contract stuff. That all plays a part of it as well. But I'm with you guys. I think the offensive line is as fluid as any position right now. I don't think they're even remotely close to being done with settling that. And of course, they never are, even into August once they start camp. But I got concerns there as well. I wanted to also mention Chris Wormley was re-signed as well, 2-year deal. He's the guy that came over from Baltimore in a trade last year.
I'm going to call this compounding our mistakes. He was terrible, and the Steelers, rather than just letting him go, felt the need to sign him to a contract now because they traded a pick for him. And this is, whether you want to think about it as
I really don't. I think that they need bodies along the defensive line. They just do.
They do, but he sucks.
Well, I don't disagree with you. He's not good, but look at their depth. Who are you going to use? Henry Mondo? He sucks. He's terrible.
Well,
basically, you've got Cam, you got Tuitt, and that's it.
Let's be honest. There's no way Wormley's a nose tackle. I can't stand hearing that.
Absolutely not.
There's no way.
But he's not even. If you look at the depth chart, he's not a nose tackle anyway. So I know he's listed that way in the roster, but he's not on the depth chart.
No.
I think Carlos Davis is probably your backup nose tackle next year, but I can't say that with certainty because we haven't seen him play enough.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, they signed Wormley to 2 years, $4.5 million, which really isn't a ton of money. But if you're going to spend
way too much,
that kind of money, like go out and sign someone else in free agency that who's better than Wormley. I mean, for that much money, you can get someone better than Chris Wormley.
I thought the same thing. Yeah, I don't know. We'll just leave that right there. Vince Williams was released by the Steelers this week, and it was something we talked about. It was definitely a possibility, and I know he is definitely a favorite of all of us. His story is a great one, a 6th-round comp, basically a 7th-round pick. Busted his tail on special teams, got himself some starts, and made himself a very nice 9-year career with the Steelers. And Ian, do you think maybe is there a possibility he comes back a little cheaper?
I was thinking about this, and he could, but if they wanted to bring him back cheaper, why didn't they just sign him to an extension, right? Like, because you're going to have the dead cap hit anyways, right? So then you take the $4 million he was owed in salary this year, you turn that into a signing bonus, pay him the minimum, and stretch it out for 2 or 3 years on top of that. But
I can answer that question.
Yeah,
go for it.
They didn't think he was worth $4 million this year.
That's fair.
If they did, they would have paid him the $4 million.
Yeah.
I would like to see Vince land someplace. I would have liked to see him stay with the Steelers. That would have really made me happy. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they just decided that they didn't think he was worth the $4 million. And so, prove me wrong. I thought they were going to keep him, and they let him go. And what I wish they would have considered was asking him if he would take a pay cut.
Is it possible is it possible that they did?
It's possible, but I think it would have gotten out.
Probably.
If they had done that, I think it would have gotten out. And Ian's right from the standpoint that they're still going to have like $3 million in dead money this year, no matter what they do. And they potentially, maybe they'll bring him back on a cheap contract or cheaper contract. But I don't know if he's, you got to wonder about a guy's pride. Will he come back on a cheap contract?
Yeah, I would think the Steelers would say to him what they say to many guys, which is go out and see what you find and let us know. I think we are all of the mind that we're ready to give Robert Spillane the opportunity. We saw enough out of him. He's a good tackler. Yeah. He's a smart player. Does he have limitations? Yep, sure does. But I think they were just, plus he's cheaper. He's just cheaper than Vince.
Cheaper and he's younger.
Yeah. And so I think that's the move there for sure. But
I will say Spillane vastly exceeded my expectations for him. Granted, my expectations for him were like Tyler Matakevich level, and he was a lot closer. He wasn't Vince Williams, but he was closer to Vince Williams than he was to Tyler Matakevich. So, my expectations for him were very low, and he vastly exceeded them.
Possible at all, Ian, that the Steelers entertain L.J. Fort coming back? He was let go by the Ravens.
I don't know. I mean, he definitely played better in Baltimore than he did here. I attributed some of that to Baltimore's scheme and style, but also to just Fort, continuing to grow as a player as he gets more experience. Players aren't, this isn't a video game, folks. Players aren't the same guys from, every time you turn the system on, that they learn, they grow, they get better. And so there was some of that too. And props to him for carving out a role and improving his game. Fort's a guy I always felt like was around the ball but not at the ball. So if you want to think of him in coverage, that the pass would be completed and he would get there and make the tackle, but he was never there in time to break up the pass or knock it out of a guy's hands or even get anywhere close to an interception, where we saw Spillane get his hands on a couple of passes. So Fort might be slightly more athletic than Spillane, but I think Spillane is a more instinctive and smarter player and reads the game better. So, honestly, if we signed Fort, I don't know who I would start, because Fort was starting in Baltimore. So, I mean, if you sign him, you almost have to start him. And I don't know.
No, you don't.
I mean, you don't have to, but I mean, if we're going to go after someone to start, I'd rather see us go after like Quan Alexander, but that would cost a bit more money than we probably have.
Yeah. We don't have the cash to sign the guy. No, I agree. Yeah. They're probably going to draft somebody. I mean, let's just be real here. They cut Vince. Mm-hmm. What they have now is Spillane and then Allen and UG3. Allen is way undersized, should not be playing linebacker.
Right.
I know fans love him, whatever. The guy should not be playing linebacker.
Yeah, he's a tweener. Yeah. You just can't do it.
Too slow to be a safety and too small to be a linebacker.
Well, we have Antoine Brooks, too. Don't forget that.
We do have Antoine Brooks, but we have no idea what he can do.
Nothing. We have no clue.
And then we also have UG3.
Who's made of glass.
Who apparently seems to be Mr. Gilbert just cannot stay healthy, can he? I don't get it, and I wonder what's going to happen with him. So the outlook isn't great there. Honestly, we need depth in the middle of the defensive line and inside linebackers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we need depth at outside linebacker.
We there's a lot of holes to fill yet.
And at safety. I mean, we have the two starting safeties, but behind them, who do we have?
Yeah, but you can bring Sean Davis back and plug him in, and he can play free or strong in a pinch. He's not ideal.
No.
He's not going to push your starters, let's put it that way. But if you need a spot start out of the guy, you're okay. You're not going to.
He was a good special teams player last year.
Yeah, he was a good special teams player, and he was good in the three safety sets. So I'm okay with that if they decide to go that direction as a Band-Aid for this year. But up front, we need some bodies.
Well, speaking of needing bodies, we're a little more than a month out from the draft, which will be that final weekend in April, 1st of May there. Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin, in the last 7 days, they've been down to Clemson. They were at the University of Georgia yesterday. And Ian has talked about this in the past, that typically the first round selection by the Steelers, with really only one exception going back to Ben Roethlisberger, they've always been at that player's pro day. Ian, do you have a inclination of where they might be looking right now at 24? I mean, are you dead sold that it's going to be an offensive lineman?
No, not at all. It would not surprise me at all if they took a running back. I don't think, we've talked about this in the past. I wrote the article that taking a first-round running back is not the most efficient thing to do. But, I feel like the Ryan Shazier pick really surprised me. And since then, I feel like I have not at all had my finger on the pulse of what this team wants to do at the draft. I mean, they took Terrell Edmonds in the first round. They went to the Virginia Tech Pro Day, and we all thought, they're there to look at Tremaine Edmonds, who will probably be off the board. But, they need an inside linebacker to replace Shazier, all that. And then they took Terrell Edmonds. We're like, where did that pick come from? That dude was projected in like the third round. I've been Artie Burns picks shocked me. So there've been a lot of surprising picks. So I'm trying to take this whole draft with a grain of salt and just say I would not be surprised at all if they took a running back, even if it's not the best idea to do that.
God, please don't.
They should take an offensive lineman. Whether they will,
they should take a tackle, but I can't say with any kind of certainty that a left tackle capable guy will be there at 24 who's deserving of the pick.
Right. And I talked a little bit about this morning in the morning quick hitter stuff about that draft dead zone. And we've talked about this a lot. They pick at 24 and then they don't pick again at 55. And if we had a dime for how many times we've probably said, geez, I like this guy, but it's too early to take him at 24, but he won't be there at 55. There's going to be a lot of guys in that range, including that running backs and maybe tight ends. Freiermuth out of Penn State. Ben, you mentioned yesterday too high in the first, but probably gone by 55. And that's the frustrating part for me, is it just makes it really, really hard to zero in on exactly what they're going to do there. But I would definitely, if I'm you, I pay close attention to where Tomlin and Colbert have been going.
They're going to go everywhere they possibly can go. They're going to go to as many as they can. And, they can't go to all of them. And both of them had been, they bemoaned the fact that they can't go to all of them.
Right.
They can't send people to all of them because of the COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, Kevin Dotson talked about the fact that he only talked to the Steelers one time in the whole draft process.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
He was super disappointed because he was a Steelers fan, and
right.
he was like,
"That's right.
This sucks. They only talked to me one time, and a bunch of other teams seemed way more interested. And the Steelers just talked to me once, and then they called me and drafted me."
I mean, if I've learned anything in covering the Steelers and just being a fan all these years, it's that they typically see things differently than, and I know this isn't really, but they see things differently than most fans.
No.
Yeah, I know. Believe
it or not.
The fans
know best, man.
We think they do.
Well,
but
the fans were pissed that we took Shazier over Darqueze Dennard that year, and look how that turned out.
Well, yeah. Speaking of cornerbacks, real quick, William Jackson is no longer in the AFC North.
Thank goodness.
That's another example of the Bengals' stupidity. That wasn't a big deal. That was not a huge deal. It was like $12 million a year.
Yep.
They let him leave. I do not understand them. Not at all. Hi, Maggie.
Yes, yep. Maggie. We're upset about it too. I mean, he's a bit of a thorn to the Steelers. He's a real long player and a good one that I think most of us were assuming we probably would have taken that year.
The Steelers wanted to draft and instead had to draft Artie Burns because he was already gone.
Who's no longer on the team.
And then the next corner taken was Xavier Howard.
We won't mention that.
Brutal.
God, led the league in picks. Yeah, so I the draft is what it is. It's we love talking about it and we love prepping for it and everything else, but at the end of the day, what 90 million Steelers fans are thinking is not what a group of 12 guys in a draft room are thinking, and that's really all that matters, quite frankly. But Ben, do you see any free agents right now that the Steelers could possibly entertain?
I think that they will make a handful of signings because they like to go into the draft with flexibility.
Right.
Okay. Like right now, all of us are going, well, you got to take an offensive lineman because you have two holes along your offensive line. You have to do it. You don't have a choice. You got to do it. Right.
Yep.
It wouldn't shock me if they signed a center.
No.
For example. It would not shock me in the least if they signed a center or even a tackle. It would not shock me, one or the other, to get in here. Maybe a running back. That wouldn't shock me either because, being very frank, the running back room right now isn't exactly stellar. They need linebacker depth badly. They need an outside linebacker to be the third linebacker. They don't have one. Rumor has it they're going to try and re-sign Ola, but they didn't feel like they had enough cap space to tender him, so they didn't.
Okay.
Which sucks.
But
the restricted free agent tender was over $2 million. And they don't have a lot of cap space to play with. They can create some more via restructures and extensions, but they haven't done it yet. that since we're talking about this, let's just make one point real quick.
Sure.
Because I don't think the fans understand it. There was a thing on Twitter today. The Steelers could have created $26 million in space already. Why haven't they done it? Why haven't they done it? They just don't want to. No, guys, that isn't the way it works, okay? The Steelers still have to negotiate a deal with each one of those players. You can't just go to a player and say, hey, this is how you're going to accept your pay. This is the way it's going to be. You have to negotiate the deal. Players with large cap hits in the latter years of their contracts are prime targets to be cap casualties. Players don't like that. They don't like being put in that position. If you're a guy who has a smaller cap hit and you're still productive in year 10, you're less likely to be cut by a team than a guy who has a $16 million cap hit and, maybe his salary is only $7 million, but Joe Hayden. Yeah. People were looking at him going, he could be a cap casualty. I think the Steelers might cut him. Are you kidding me? And players don't want to be in that position. They don't want to have their team consider that. So you still have to negotiate the deal. You can't just tell a player this is what he's going to take. We need to create cap space, so you're going to take this deal. It doesn't work like that. And I just want to emphasize that because fans seem to think that it's 100% of the Steelers just to decide what that's going to be, and it doesn't work like that.
No,
doesn't.
No. It's not a video game. It's
not fucking Madden.
No, it's
wait. You mean these guys are actual human beings, and you actually have to talk to them and get them to agree to do something?
They have agents, agents, and yes, they. Oh God, I know.
Agents will explain business reality to them
very quickly. Yes, very very quickly, and what was the other thing I wanted to mention to you? I don't think we mentioned the fact that Kevin Colbert is coming back. He will be with the Steelers through the 2022 NFL draft. And
at least.
Right, at least. And I think some fans, I saw a few saying basically, look, oh, great, we'll get rid of him right before the draft. We can, pick a new quarterback when he's gone. And it's like, no, that's not how it's going to work. He'll be there through the draft. He is going to pick Ben's successor if that's how they go about it. I mean, for all we know, they might think about doing it this year. I don't think they will, but who knows? You want a guy with experience who's been there before, who knows other GMs and can wheel and deal if necessary, especially considering that they should have a handful of comp picks. I'm glad he's sticking it out. We talked about the fact that he was doing these 1-year deals, and that allows him to just say, okay, that's it, I'm done, when he's ready. But I think it's good that you have an experienced general manager there knowing what the team is facing, not just with uncertainty at quarterback, but also with the cap going back up, but to what extent we really don't know yet. So I think that was a good development this week for sure. And gentlemen, any parting shots tonight before we wrap up? Clearly Maggie has one.
Yeah, apparently. So I'll go first.
Yeah.
If you happen to be out and about in the Pittsburgh area and see a Steelers player, they're not entitled to give you a picture.
Oh, here we go.
Don't take a picture of them at the gym working out and then post it on Twitter and be like, this guy wouldn't give me a picture because he was working out at the gym. Like, players are not entitled to give you anything. And leave them the fuck alone when they're out in public.
Are you saying that part of their contract is not to do everything that I want them to as a fan? I'm stunned. It's one thing, and you're right, Ian, it's one thing when a 12-year-old kid walks up to a player that's having dinner or something. It's a whole other one when it's a grown adult. And then to, as you mentioned, to tweet at them and tag them and, he wouldn't give me, he was in a bad mood. He must be upset about his contract situation. He kept looking at his phone every couple minutes and everything. It's like, who's the one that's got the problem? You or him? I think it's you. But I digress on
more than that. And don't do it from a burner account. Tweet it from your own account.
That too.
pussy. Taking a picture of someone in the gym is pretty low class anyway.
Anyway,
the picture of a guy who turned you down for a picture and then snitch tagging him in a tweet so that he'll get harassed for it is fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Defending that move is bigger fucking bullshit. If someone I knew in real life did that, I would snatch him by the throat. I don't know why it seems to be okay on Twitter. It's not.
No, it's not.
Because you're behind the safety of a keyboard does not make it okay.
Yeah, I agree. And Ben, I don't know if that was your rant or did you have another parting shot tonight?
That was it.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I
Ian
just
started a little fire here. It wasn't my fault.
Okay.
It was his.
Yeah, well, no, and that's okay because I knew it was coming, and
Actually, I didn't. I'd forgotten.
What's that?
I had forgotten about it. To
Yeah,
be perfectly honest.
My rant is just a general one, or my parting shot, and it's just that it always, I don't know why it does, but it always surprises me how upset Steelers fans get every year at this time. When you have a quarterback that is on a second, third, fourth contract, it's going to be more difficult to wheel and deal when free agency comes around. That's just how it works in the NFL right now. But yet I still see people, oh, why aren't we signing anybody? Why do we never have money to do that? It's like, if you don't understand it, then don't talk about it. I would not get on Twitter and start talking about the physics involved with launching a rocket into space because I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Mark, why wouldn't you? Everyone on Twitter is an expert on everything.
Well, this is also true. I do dabble in the dark sciences, but I don't want to go any further than that. Just relax. These guys know what they're doing. They'll have a team. It'll be a competitive team. I didn't say they were winning a Super Bowl. I just said they'd be a competitive team. Let's just see where it goes from there. But yeah, just stop acting surprised all the time. Anyway, so we threw a lot of information at you tonight, and I'm sure it'll continue. And whether or not we get an announcement on where and when JuJu's headed, we'll be sure and let you know, and we'll talk about it next week. But for Ben and Ian, that's it for tonight. Thanks for listening to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.